All right, so in looking at this, you should be able to recognize that this is vertex form. And what that means is if you look at the value of x, it would give you a 0 here, and then this vertical shift, that is your vertex. So that's the very first thing that you should be able to answer here, even before using your calculator. So the value of x that would make this parentheses equal 0 is 7, and then the vertical shift, -1. So that is going to be your vertex. So that part of it you should be able to get like instantly. And if there was a question where it just asks for one thing from this, this is what it will ask you. It'll just ask you what's the vertex from this. Okay? And this is also, as I mentioned, you are going to be asked to do a couple things by hand without using your calculator. Hey, this is one of them. And so you need to know from a vertex method or from the vertex form how to find the vertex. Now, in addition to this, you're asked some other information about the graph. And so let's go through how to find that other information. Using the TID9 would be one of the easiest things to do. And that involves going into your Y editor and entering the equation exactly as it appears. And remember, it already has a y equals, so you don't need to put the y equals part. Just start with the 3 and then the parentheses x minus 7 to the power of 2, all minus 1. Okay. And once you have that, you can just go view your graph. Oops, let me change my graphing window here. All right, so when you look at this graph, it should confirm that 7, -1 is our vertex, and that's accurate. It looks consistent with this. And so there's some other things that you may need to answer on this. First, a couple tendencies, or actually first, the axis of symmetry. Again, in this form, you don't need a calculator to find axis of symmetry. It's always going to be x is equal to whatever the x coordinate of your vertex is. Okay, so if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you have this axis of symmetry right here. And that just means that the graph is going to be a mirror image across this dashed line. In addition to this, you'll also want to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the value of y when x is 0. So again, you could solve it by hand here. You could say 0 minus 7 is -7, squared is 49 times 3, and then subtract 1 from that. Okay, so you know it's going to be a large number, but you could also just use your calculator. Go to F5, the Math tab, choose Value, and you want to find the value when x is, and just type in that number, 0. So what is the corresponding value when x is 0? And we get 146. So much easier to use the calculator for that. Okay, next, you want to see some of the tendencies of this graph. So right now I have this point. I know it opens where? Up or down? My leading coefficient is positive, so it's going to open up. Remember, if a is greater than 0, it opens up. If a was less than 0, it would open down. And then also you can determine, is it narrow or wide than the parent graph. And that's based on, again, the absolute value. If the absolute value here is 3, so the absolute value is greater than 1, therefore it's going to be more narrow. So our graph is going to look like this. It's going to be kind of a skinnier, steeper graph. Okay, so this is what the sketch should look like, or what your graph should look like. You can see on here that it's pretty similar to what the calculator shows. Right? The other potential things that you might be asked, I don't think I asked you in this particular problem, but it might come up later, and that is x-intercepts. And you can see that you have 2 x-intercepts, and remember your x-intercepts have a y value of 0. And it's really easy, again, to find these. What I would suggest you do to find your x-intercepts is go, once you have your equation typed into your y editor, I would go back to the home screen. I'd use the solve feature, so F2 solve, and then I'd just take my whole function, so I would use solve y1 of x, set that equal to 0, and solve for what values of x can you plug into this function y1, in which case the values of y are 0. So if we just say solve y1 of x equals 0, comma, x, close it off, and when I hit enter, I get my solution. If I want the decimal form here, hit the green diamond button. So I get about 7.5, that's my larger one, or 7.6. And then if I scroll up to find 6.4 would be my smaller one. Is that consistent with what we see in the graph here? Yeah. So those are consistent x-intercepts also.